Contenders, ready! Gladiators, ready! 3, 2, 1. The Gladiators!
Hello and welcome to the GladPod in association with Gladiators TV. I'm David Blackmore, and with me, as always, Diane Udell, aka Jet, and producer Paul, diving into the mailbag this week. And there is an email with a couple of questions from Shaquille Joseph. Hi, Shaquille. Now, she admits, and I think, do you know what, like a lot of us have done in recent years, particularly during lockdown and the pandemic, to going back and rewatching the original series again. But as I say, it sparked a couple of questions from her. Now, Paul, I know that we've touched on this before, but just to remind us again, why did Breakthrough and Conquer not return to the main series?
So Breakthrough and Conquer, it was trialled at Wembley Arena, which was the live shows just before the second series in 1993. But yeah, it never made it through onto the TV series. As we discussed with Lightning, which you can't remember, she suffered an injury where the Contender's knee knocked out her vertebrae, and then she had to have it quickly put back in by the physios. So I guess, to be honest, the producers swapped it out for Powerball, which was kind of like a similar tackling event, which was just as aggressive and probably more impressive than Breakthrough and Conquer. It was also a very American themed event with obviously like the American football element and then the wrestling afterwards. So maybe the producers just didn't kind of get what they wanted from it at the trial run at Wembley, or with Lightning's injury, it was just kind of a bit too much for a contender to come charging at a very static Gladiator, whereas within Powerball, I guess the Gladiators were equally moving around as well, so it's kind of might lessen the impact somewhat. But yeah, I don't know if you ever played Breakthrough and Conquer.
No, I didn't. I can very vaguely remember it. That's probably for a number of reasons, i.e. my age right now. But I do remember it being in the arena, but I didn't partake. I think after Lightning's injury, it sort of dampened the atmosphere a little bit, and I think they had to think on their feet about something, as you said, equally as kind of a rugby-esque, but without too much of the grappling, because that's when a lot of injuries really were coming into their own.
Now, the other question, again, I think both of you probably have an input on this. Are there any parts of the American Gladiators Eliminator that you would have liked to have seen in the UK? So, Paul, I thought I'd start with you first.
Oh, this is an interesting one. I mean, the American Gladiators Eliminator, they probably had the most different versions throughout the whole kind of run of the series. It did change quite considerably. They had random things in there at some point, like a Versi climber, which was the start of their Eliminator on some of the series. I can't think of anything that I would particularly take over. I think our Eliminator in the UK was probably the better version. I know that one big change that we did from the American version was to take the Travelator, which they had at the very start of their Eliminator, and we moved it towards at the very end, which was kind of more of a dramatic finish, because would the contender be too tired to get up it? Whereas in the American version, it was at the very start. So when the contender started, they could pretty much get up there really, really easy because their legs were quite fresh. So yeah, I think that ours was better than the American one.
Am I right in thinking and remembering as well that we had a zip line at the end of one of them, but they were getting so many ankle injuries, they had to modify it? And another thing, we had this huge slide. So I remember we all walked into the arena first time they rigged the Eliminator, and we all went, "Ooh, can we have a play?" Nigel, absolutely not. When you play, it's when you all get injured. And he was right.
I remember that slide actually for two reasons. For one, the arena floor just before the filming had to be re-secured because it was so heavy. The arena floor couldn't take the weight of the slide, so they had to, just before the recording, had to reinforce the flooring. And then secondly, because it blocked the view of quite a lot of the audience as well. So when they were watching the Eliminator, for quite a lot of them, the big slide was just blocking the view, so the audience in the arena couldn't see. So that's why the slide ended up getting ditched. I think is a good thing. Like, it shows that the producers were obviously as much thinking about Gladiators as a live arena show as they were a TV show.
And Di, sure I've asked you this before, and forgive me if I have, listeners as well. And just based on what you said, I'm guessing the answer is no. But did you ever do the Eliminator? Like, even when nobody was watching?
No, we get really told off. But I'm sure a couple of the naughtier Glads might have crept around it a few times. But, Nigel was right. Unfortunately, when you go onto an event, we all learnt very early on, when you go on to play on something, it's quite often when you can get injured. And if that's at the beginning of the whole series, you're lessening the chances of being in the quarters and the semis and finals in order to kind of be in the whole of the series. We saw way too many injuries. And as I said, it was mainly the zip line and anything else where you were landing feet down onto a soft surface, because usually it would be an ankle or a knee that would go and not the crash mat itself. So we were barred.
Paul, did you set up an Eliminator style course at home for yourself to compete? Did you have a zip line? Did you have a travelator? With a travelator, the stairs? Because I'm thinking as a kid, I think I had done most of them. But what did you?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I used to have some kind of version that would be out in the garden and then would end up with running up the stairs as the travelator at the end. So I think pretty much every kid at that stage of their life in the 90s had some version of the events, even though John Sachs would always say at the end of it, like, please don't recreate the events. But I think every playground in the country had kids hitting themselves with pillows, recreating Jewel, or, like you said, running up the stairs for the travelator.
One of the funniest things I saw from some of the fans is they would often take bits of large sheets of A3 together and stick them up at the bottom of a staircase to be able to burst through, like people did at the Eliminator. There was a lot of fans sending pictures of that at the time. If you were one of them, let us know.
The other thing, Paul, if you were to do the Eliminator, were there any parts of it that you thought you would have been better or worse at?
I probably would have been horrendous at the hand bike. Not going to lie, that would have been horrendous. Maybe the rolling logs I would have excelled at, I would have said.
Yeah, I agree with the hand bike, definitely. And maybe the cargo net going up, just because that was a place where if you weren't on it as a contender, whoever you was chasing behind you had a really good chance to sort of catch up if they were flying up it and you were kind of getting yourself stuck. The zip wire is obviously the easiest part. But I think for me, I know it's exhausting. I think the travelator, I would have enjoyed going up there just because of how I'm built. I think I just got that. I've got the explosiveness from my large thighs. I think I would have been able to whiz up that travelator. But yeah, I think the handbike would have ruined.
It's whether the beam, that when they placed the beam there for the contenders to run across, and then they had a drop down onto the arena floor, and the amount of times that would then knock the contenders' knees, which were already tired, then try and get up the travelator. I thought that was just a genius stroke to kind of put that element just before the travelator to get their knees to be a bit wobbly.
Let us know. There's plenty more from you guys to get in touch with about this. But what bits of the American Eliminator would you have liked? What part of the UK Eliminator do you think you would have excelled at? Get in touch with us on the GladPod by emailing gladpod@gladiatorstv.com. Slide into our DMs on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. But yeah, let's get on with this week's pod, shall we?
3, 2, 1.
On this week's GladPod, he may have only been in one series of the Gladiators, Series 6 that was in 1997, but he is a huge presence and personality when it comes to all things Gladiators. He was on our 30th anniversary show. It is, of course, Khan the Conqueror, Rad Nekic. How are you doing, Rad?
Fine. Good to see you all.
Next up is Brian. And he's up against our new gladiator, Khan.
The impressive figure of Khan dominates the arena, and here's why. 23 centimetres taller than Brian, 41 kilos heavier. And apart from that, they're quite evenly matched. Well, there's Khan, our only new male signing this season. Brian has the advantage of knowing that this is Khan's first test under battle conditions, but one glimpse of those massive shoulders must give Brian cause for concern.
We love to start all of our GladPods, really, by just going back to what life was like before Gladiators. The first question that I wanted to ask you, though, was, because you joined the series in 97. So just give me a bit of background, that part of the Glad journey in terms of, had you already seen the show? What was the background with that?
I used to know Mike Wolf long before Gladiator started. We used to be in the same acting agency, which was Crawford's in London. And we used to get phone calls to be at a cast. And we used to meet up briefly in a casting for these kind of rough, swashbuckling characters. We got to know each other, Mike, and then I saw him in Birmingham a few years later. I said, Mike, what's going on? What brings you to Birmingham? And he said, there's this new, in his London accent, there's a new series, Gladiators. I said, really? How'd you get in? He says, we've got to go for the tryouts, and there won't be one for a while due to the fact that they've cast all the characters. So I thought, damn, how come I didn't hear about this? And so I used to see them every season. They'd come in June, July, August. They used to come into Birmingham, and I used to see them. And I said, tell me when the next audition is, when the next audition. And then in 95, I got a week's notice, and I wasn't prepared. And I turned up for the tryouts, and it was brutal. And my cousin had come over from Serbia with me, and driving back to Birmingham, I remember the silence in the car. And it wasn't that I didn't get into the Gladiators, it was such a letdown of my standard of not completing the tryout. And I swore to myself that I'm going to spend the next year or so training like a man possessed, not to get into the Gladiators, but to conquer, if there is another opportunity to enter the tryouts, to beat all before me. So I went about 2 years till the next tryouts, and that was 97. And I trained and I turned up and I literally beat a lot of people.
Did you do anything different with your training for it? Because we've heard from Hunter, James Crossley, before, who would push cars around car parks to sort of replicate atmosphere. Is that something that you did?
I tried to inject a lot more cardio. I knew how to get big. I spent many years in late 80s and early 90s training with Dorian. So the issue of getting big wasn't hard. But as there were a lot of big guys for the tryouts, it's not the matter of just getting big. You had to perform as a big guy, but be as fit and as agile as a little guy. That was the problem. Adding a huge amount of cardio, which there's a big no-no in the bodybuilding fraternity. Cardio and mass don't mix. I found that it did, and it was like basically running up hills, finding adequately high ledge, and then jumping onto it 50, 60 times, trying to incorporate ballistic movements. And eventually you just found it easier and easier. It was quite interesting because when I went the second time for the tryouts, it was exactly the same routine, the same course, yet it was like a different person doing it. I thought, did I stumble on this one last time? Because it was like somebody gave me an oxygen tank the second time, and I just kept on going without feeling any cardio lag or anything at all.
Tell me a bit more about you, the person, way before Gladiators as well. So you moved to the UK when you were 12, originally from Serbia, and you grew up in the Midlands.
It was a typical story. I grew up in Eastern Europe, and it was quite so like with my grandparents. My father was working in Belgrade, and I grew up with my grandparents, and I had a lot of cousins, older cousins, male cousins, and it was a very masculine, patriarchal environment where it was why argue when a fight will settle it. And the problem was I was the youngest out of the cousins, so I was always on the receiving end. I started to question whether I was quite so like weak or skinny, because I was quite a slow developer in general. I was a very, very thin child. When I came to England, I went to boarding school, the Royal Wolverhampton boarding school. And I remember when we used to go swimming, not that I was looking around, but there was a lot of young men that were hitting puberty earlier. And I was looking around, I'm thinking, am I being lagging behind in the sense, like shoulder development? I was super small and super skinny. And I remember when I was 15, I was weighed in the annual weighing and this like checkup. I weighed 7 stone, 1 pound. I remember that. It kind of etched in my mind. And I thought, God, why wasn't I slapped with the weak genetical towel? So I always had a bit of I wouldn't say a complex, but a kind of doubting that I was going to get to any kind of physical prowess ever. But I started training. What happened was approximately at about 15, a new sports teacher arrived. I think he taught maths and his other was sports, Mr. Beckett. And he organised the weight training club, and I turned up and I used to just sit there. He had 2 older boys with him, and I said, can I join Mr. Beckett? But there's only a few weights. There wasn't enough for all of us. So he said, well, at the moment we are full, there's 3 of us. And then what happened, one chap dropped out, and I said, can I join Mr. Beckett? He says, yeah, come on in, come and join. And that was the path that I started training, and I never looked back since. And hell or high water, I would never miss a session with Mr. Beckett training with the weights. And sometimes if, for instance, Mr. Beckett wasn't there or circumstances took me, I would go training on my own. And I remember once missing a session, and I felt so guilty that I went and had 2 sessions in a row, what I would do just to make up for the one that I missed.
And then, Rad, you went actually on to train with the legendary bodybuilder Dorian Yates as well, didn't you?
Yes, we trained. Well, our paths crossed because we shared the same gyms. And I remember when he came onto the scene, he was like a genetical freak, and everybody was like, wowie, and it was a very nice guy, laid back, easygoing. And what I liked about Dorian, that he never got involved in politics. He would come to the gym, put his bag down, get changed, and tunnel vision. And I thought, I like that character. I don't like a lot of fanfare, a lot of talk. Action is the talking that the Warriors do. So we ended up training together, went to California in 92, Gold's Gym, Venice. It was quite an experience.
And then moving back over to Gladiators, obviously you were one of the only male gladiators to join in Series 6, and there was 4 new female gladiators in that season. So there was Fox, Gold, Siren and Rocket. And in previous episodes of the GladPod in Series 1, we spoke to the gladiator that never was, which was Shark. And I believe that you and Metin had a crossover paths throughout your whole gladiators experience at the start.
He wasn't at the tryouts when I was at nautical school, when I went for the second tryout. I did not encounter him. He was not at the tryouts. I think he was a friend of one of the gladiators, and I think he kind of ticked the boxes. And when they were looking for somebody, I think he was signed up. When I passed the initial test, I think they were in a dilemma whether to take me or him. So the best solution was to find a kind of eliminator amongst gladiators to find out which one would stay on. So I think it was Whiplash, where they strap us into the kind of a glove, both sides. And then we're in this perimeter, and we had to pull one another out of the perimeter. I had to go against him on that.
And needless to say, then you obviously won that contest and made it onto the TV series.
Male contender is David. He's going to be facing one of our new gladiators, Khan.
Contender ready! Gladiator ready! 3, 2, 1.
Half a minute of hell and a face full of chest for David. Khan too wide to run past. A real David and Goliath struggle. Khan seems to be trying to wrench David's arm off his shoulder rather than the dog bone from his grasp. David needs a forklift from his storeroom to ship this stock. Khan's got a grip on this, and Khan has ripped him off. Just over halfway through, Khan the Conqueror.
We did hear back in the day as well, there was rumours that you were being lined up to be a new bad guy alongside Wolf. And I remember reading in the Gladiators brochure that you said, I'm going to be bad, Wolf has monopolised this for too long. Was that the idea from the producers? Or
never really. They were just kind of asking me questions, and it was like rhetoric. I mean, nothing was planned. Where I'm kind of a bit with the producers, they didn't really direct me in what they wanted from me. That's why, if I'm honest, if you look on the series, I didn't really come across very talkative. I was kind of trying to create this Ivan Drago character. If you remember Rocky, the big guy that says nothing and destroys everybody, So I wanted to create that, but obviously it didn't come across very friendly on the screen, so I presume that's why I didn't last more than one season.
Absolutely awesome.
I refused to go down. He tried, he nearly got away, but I just put on the turbos and I terminated him.
My signature was going to focus on performance. I was wanting to just obliterate everything and everybody, and I would have liked to have an opportunity to train a little bit more, because all those exercises you see me on, there wasn't much practice beforehand. You didn't get a chance. There was to basically, they set it up and then you'd come on and you'd perform, and then they'd dismantle it, and you didn't really get a chance to have a little practice run on it.
So who came up with your name?
I don't know. They just kind of ummed and ahed. I think I got an inkling that they were going to call me Tank, and then they opted for Khan, and I asked them any reason why Khan, and they said Shere Khan from the Jungle Book because of the protracted jaw. So I think that's why they call me Khan.
Did you have any input with your costume design?
Not really, no, because they put a Genghis Khan on the costume, but the method behind the name was Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. So we would just put there, and this is what you will wear, this is what you will have. And I was pretty much content to wear, within reason, anything.
So how did your training differ once you knew you were being cast as a gladiator? What were you doing?
Ballistic movements. I mean, I still pretty much train like that now. Weight times speed equals power. So when you train with bodybuilding, it's very linear. So you don't really move your whole body. You move one muscle group at a time, which doesn't reflect very well in performance combat. So what I find is like kettlebells, climbing up ropes, running up mountains, trying to be as explosive as I can. And with a good nutritional base, it's surprising what a body can accomplish. Well, now what I do, I usually wrestle on Mondays. I'm the freestyle wrestling. It's not the American WWF, but Olympic level freestyle wrestling, which is one of the most brutally hard sports that's out there. So that kind of knocks me about. I have a Tuesday off, and then Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday or Sunday, I will train 3 more times. So what I will usually do is rubber bungee rope, which are very explosive, kettlebells. And in fact, the irony is that I say to my sons that if Gladiators was now, I'd probably be in better performance shape than I was then, because then I was very bulky and mass. And being honest, I probably had a bit of water retention. Now I'm kind of shredded and very dry and not far off that weight. So readjusting my diet was the biggest thing that I've ever stumbled on, because at 44, I thought this is the time to retire. I remember having a really bad session in the wrestling club. There's quite a few young MMA stars that were coming up, and we were having real battles down there. And one particular week, I couldn't put one foot in front of the other, and I thought, what is going on? Couldn't have deteriorated within 1 week. So I think the only thing that could have changed from the previous week must have been my diet. Well, that particular day, I had 12 Weetabix for breakfast. It gives you energy. It must be that. There's nothing else that I changed that could be different. So I started researching in low carb diet, and I started implementing it, and suddenly it was like putting a dragster engine in an old chassis. I just had a huge burst of performance that everybody thought, what are you doing, Rad? What's going on? And I never looked back since. So really, I've been on it for quite a few years on this diet, and it's almost like a biohack. It's quite interesting, because I keep in touch with Dorian a lot, and we both exchange little bits of information. Neither of us are into bodybuilding anymore. We're both into longevity and fitness and performance-orientated aging, which is surprising what the human body can do if it just tunes itself with the right prime directive nutrition.
And Rad, just going back to the Gladiators arena again. So you've been given your name, you've got your costume, you've been training for some of the games, obviously not as much as what you would have liked, but with the limited training that you had, how did you feel when you first walked into and you had all of the audience and the fans were waiting for you and your first event? How did that feel?
It's like watching it from a third party. It's really weird experience. You can't comprehend it till you're there. You're on that platform ready to go on, for instance, Hang Tough, and you're like in a daze. You're going through the motions, and everybody thinks, but really you're kind of thinking, watching from a third party, you're looking at it thinking, am I really here? What's going to happen? And this kind of like battle within yourself to suppress those nerves, because if you have too much adrenaline, it can be counterproductive. So you're trying to breathe and not show it on the screen as well. So it's a good combination and an elixir of adrenaline, and trying to counter it with thought-induced calmness, not let the cat out the bag that you're probably more nervous than the contender. The reason being is if the contender loses to an 18-stone guy, well, it's foregone conclusion. But if an 18-stone giant, gladiator character loses to a 14-stone guy, it looks really bad. So the pressure was on us to win.
We now move into the men's event with Piers. And he's going to be facing one of our new gladiators, Khan.
Is this the calm before the storm, and can Piers weather it? Oh, there's the answer. A real end of the Piers show. 4.5 seconds and Khan crushes the contender. Oh, nice dancing. But I'd get a refund on that hair perm.
You lost your balance there. I mean, it must be quite awesome standing up there and looking into his eyes, lovingly.
He's one big guy. I took one great big blow to the head, and the next minute, I felt about 3 or 4 more coming. What can I say? I went down a bit early.
You did go down a little bit early. Huge congratulations, well done.
I just got a little impatient, waited up there.
You are very, very large, and I mean, he's a little bit slimmer than you, and you just went in there and knocked him out. You did your job. Let's hear it for Khan and for Piers. No point.
And talking about winning, as a one-season gladiator, you have massively impressive 71% win rate from all of your performances, which is really, really impressive compared to, like, we've done the stats for all of the Gladiators team, and you're definitely up there at the top. You were actually undefeated in sumo ball, suspension bridge, whiplash. You played hang tough 3 times, and you have some really great clips, which I really enjoyed watching, of you on hang tough, where you caught the contender in really kind of exciting ways as well. So I didn't know if that was something from the producers.
Probably 3 espressos of adrenaline, saying, I can't lose, throwing myself if I have to, grab pulleys. It was really, really desperation more than anything. You just switch on the turbos.
First up, all the way from Hoyt, it's Ali! And he's facing Khan.
The Khan always comes to conquer. Let's get the measure of the man. Stands 193 tall, weighs 114 kilos, sheer Khan power. Ali Graham posts some fine figures, but he's still 13 centimetres shorter and 38 kilos lighter.
3, 2, 1.
And he'll take some getting past. Look at the size of him. He should have a sign saying wide load on the back of his leotard. Ali going great guns into the scoring zone, and Khan misses a ring. He's in trouble. And Ali eating into Khan's territory. Giant swings. He's on the verge of victory. Khan one-ringed. Has he given it away? Oh my goodness! Snatches him away from the platform and sends him packing to the floor. Incredible stuff from Khan. The woodman cut down in his prime. What disappointment. But if anybody can, Khan can. Quite brilliant.
What was your favourite event from all of the
Sumo ball? I like sumo ball, and the duel was the most nerve-wracking, and I can assure you all the other gladiators probably found the duel the most nerve-wracking, because it was so easy to lose due to the fact that, being a big guy, your platform was smaller than the smaller guy, and if you step over, in fact, one of them I actually stepped over, lost the balance, and I lost to the guy that I previously beat, and it was quite embarrassing, really. It was very stressful. It was the stress that made me step over.
Piers squared up to Khan on the pugil platform in his heat and took a drubbing before Khan dumped him on the deck. A real end of the Piers show. Sorry about that. Khan, a man of few words, but clearly with plenty of support. The difference in height and weight between these two is there for all to see, especially Piers. And Khan looking to make this a hammer horror for Piers, and Piers soaking it up and unprepared to yield to the relentless onslaughts. Oh, but he's got him! The Khan is toppled. David defeats Goliath. The mighty oak is felled. Hysteria in the Bryant household. All hail the hero.
There's no hiding place up there, is there?
Oh, what a feeling. To face that guy is most daunting. But I tell you, I can't believe it. It's a miracle. It is a total miracle.
So you didn't fancy your chances to begin with?
Well, look, if you come up against a guy that size, I don't know how you fancy your chances, but I just knew I've got to give it everything I had, and I did, and somehow I've pulled it off. Way!
Let's hear it for Piers. He scores 10 points.
With the sumo ball, you were more based, so I like sumo ball, because I thought, well, if I lose a sumo ball, I bloody deserve to lose, because I'm so like by 3 stone heavier than most contenders I had to go up against.
Our second male contender is Alex. And he's up against Khan.
Well, let's have a look at what the Khan's got to offer. This, his first season of gladiator action. He's 13 centimetres taller than Alex and 35 kilos heavier, so he's going to be no pushover. Alex putting his back into it. Alex digging deep, trying to control the sumo ball. But the wrath of Khan is there for all to see. He's got the power and he's looking for the glory. There's plenty of shoulder at work there. Oh, and Alex takes a flyer. He's out of there. Clean sheet by the Glads. Disappointment from Alex's fans. Khan can't contain his joy.
Did you have any events that you were like really not keen on playing and didn't want to do in the show?
The one was I tried it once, and I thought elephants are not meant to fly. The one with the big ball with a net at the top, pendulum, just too hard. The gravity, I could feel I'm trying to go sideways, and the gravity's trying to pull me vertically down. But I think I was only on that one once. But and Jewel was very stressful again. Jewel was very, very, because there was a special way of doing it, and I haven't quite mastered it. So,
Rad, you talk a lot about stress and pressure. You knew a lot about Gladiators before joining. You know, you're joining in Series 6 in 97. So you've already seen a lot of it. You're coming in as a new gladiator. Did you put pressure on yourself, or was pressure put on you to make sure that you performed as a new gladiator?
I always put pressure on myself. I mean, whether it's right or wrong, it's the little thing called the ego. The ego, and obviously, and we were all the same, all of us, whether it's Wolf, Hunter, we were all driven by that because it was as real. People think gladiators, there might have been a bit of setup. It wasn't. It was, we were encouraged to go out there and perform. Not once did I remember anybody trying to take it easy. We really put the pedal to the metal. So we not only did we have the audience watching us, we also, amongst ourselves, we wanted to show who was the alpha gladiator. It is what it is, but it was like that. There was a lot of intent in our actions.
And I think as well, from the reunion episode that we had, there seemed to be a lot of respect to you from a lot of the male gladiators, like Wolf and Ace and Hunter, all kind of noticed you on that call and really made a point of kind of calling you out on there. Which of the Gladiators team did you get on best with during your time with the show?
I got on great with all of them. You know, if you were hypothetically to go to each one to a pub, I'd pretty much have a brilliant conversation with any one of them, all of them, because this is where I actually think that the second Gladiator effort, when they brought it out 10 years later, didn't succeed because I don't think the characters were so individually special. What we had as Gladiators, I think we were all characters in our own right, and we all were really deep down nice guys, and we got on really well. And I think that's what went with the second effort when they tried to bring it out. They didn't have that personality projection that our boys had and girls.
And just before we kind of go on to the Sky Gladiators, which I'd love to cover with you, were you surprised not to come back for Series 8? You kind of went off to do the Royal Tournament, performing in royalty on the Pursuit event. How did that come about? Because that was happening just before the TV recording.
Yes, what happened was I had no saying that again. I was placed in the Royal Tournament, and I can tell you now, it was one of the hardest 2 weeks that I ever experienced, because when you do very explosive exercise, and that was a sprint and assault course, it really rips your mind. If you try sprinting, let's say 3 or 4 runs, 100 meters, the next day, your legs are going to hurt as if you did heavy duty squats. Well, I was there for 2 weeks doing 2 shows a day. To put icing on the cake, when I arrived there, on the first day I was there, the instructor showed us around the course, and there was like a giant like a mesh that you had to kind of with your legs go in and out of. And I wandered off from the group that the instructor was showing us. I thought, I'm gonna have a little go at this, and I had a little go, and as I put my foot through one of the mesh holes, my ankle twisted, and I just heard like tearing going on, and I went cold. When that cold sweat hit you, I thought, oh my God, I've just ripped my whole ankle. I won't be able to do this. So it's quite a funny story. So I go to the instructor. I said, I think I've ripped my ankle. He goes, let's have a look. And literally, as I moved my tracksuit to show them, it was already starting to swell up and inflame. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And they said, well, you can go home, but you won't get paid, or you can try and wrap it up and take some painkillers, and you can try to make the most of it. Being the person I am, I thought, well, I'm going to give it a go. So at the Royal Tournament, they had the Royal Gun Salutes, and there was Portsmouth, Dartmouth, and one other one. And they had their own barracks in the Royal Tournament. So they said, go down there and ask them for some medical grade painkillers. So I go down there, I walk amongst all these like soldiers and real tough looking characters, and they're having, all right, Khan, what you doing down here? I said, I've sprained my ankle, I need to get some painkillers. So they're all giggling and laughing, and I'm thinking, what they're laughing about? So I said, I need some heavy duty painkillers because I'm going to show the doctor. He says, well, we got these. I said, yeah, I'll take them. I said, how am I supposed to swallow these? They're like torpedoes. And they're laughing. They're saying, it's battle painkillers. What you do is you insert it in your...
This is suppository.
And it gets absorbed through your colon. But you know what? Can I have the ones, or what you put in your mouth? He said, they won't be strong enough for that injury. I said, just give me the ones and I'll strap it up. And I took the oral ones, and I somehow lasted 2 weeks. The funny thing, it wasn't my ankle that eventually was giving me problems. It was my quads and my thigh. I actually tore my left quad high up because for the repetitive, explosive sprinting that I was doing, my body wasn't recovering. And it was towards the last week, my legs, I had to sleep with my legs up in the air. It was that bad. 2 weeks, 2 shows a day.
Gosh, Rad, that takes some doing to sustain that sort of level of injury.
And the male contenders are from the Army and the Royal Air Force. Now let's give a very warm welcome to our 2 male gladiators this evening. They are the awesome Khan and Hunter.
Hunter and Khan showing just how far spandex can stretch in front of a family audience. Mind you, from this angle, even they're dwarfed by the size of the course.
Contenders, you will go on my first whistle. Gladiators on my second. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, 5 seconds head start. Will it be enough? The contenders are off to a great start, and they'll need it. Hunter's been starved and kept in a small box for 2 weeks, and we rubbed Bombardier Murray's vest under Khan's nose to give him a good scent, but I think he's rather taken to it. Okay, the Army are doing really well now. They're in the lead. They're just running around the cone to the webbing. They have to fling themselves underneath there because the Gladiators are hot on their heels. Look, Hunter is bearing down on him. He better hurry up if he wants to stay ahead. Oh, Hunter had a little bit of a slip there, which means that the RAF chap is first to the high wall, and they're coming round now to the bungee cube. This is a really hard one to get through. Very easy to get tangled up in there. Oh! And look, the RAF has been snared by Hunter, which means the Army makes it through and takes the checkered flag. And the Army there, the only victorious service on today's run. Khan found him just a little too fast.
Your Royal Highness, that completes this evening's Gladiator Challenge.
Let's go back a little bit more and tell me about the hair.
It's gone. Let's go bald growth. I ain't going to pretend. You know, I had it long and I had a beard till last year, but I thought, you know what? Why look older than I need to? So I shaved it all off and I'm just going to keep it like this. But I started to recede and it went all grey and I thought, it's gone. We're not blessed like the ladies to have lovely locks of hair.
Did you get sculpted quite a bit? Who was your producer and director back then?
Nigel Lithgow and Kenny Warwick, I think it might have been. They didn't really interact with me very much. It was a hello in the corridors as we crossed paths. But it was like the Romans and the gladiators. Literally, where the Caesar would walk past and we would just nothing. It was a bit like that, really. We were about to die.
And Rad, I remember seeing you at the Royal Tournament and noticing that your hair from the TV series had started to get considerably longer than what it was previously. Again, something came up from the Shark episode where the producers were quite adamant with Metin for him to grow his hair longer. I just wondered if that was a similar thing with you, with the producers trying to like mold your image or shape you in a certain way.
Over the years, I've always toyed with having long hair. I've always had long hair, and then I'd have one of these moments where I'd cut it all off. But in the past, I mean, I had hair right down to here. I just like the hair in the sense of like the ancient barbarians. It wasn't like all kempt. It was just long, wild hair like a lion's mane. So I enjoyed having long hair. And I wanted to start developing my own character where I was planning to lose a bit of bulk for the following season, get really etched. Because if you look objectively, the best performing gladiator was Hunter. And if you look at his physique, he was very lean, dry. He didn't carry any surplus bulk. It was all performance orientated. So understanding, same as MMA fighters nowadays, when you look at them, most of them are very lean and minimum ballast. So I was planning to get really shredded, grow my hair long and become like Conan the Conqueror of the gladiator arena.
I speak for a lot of the fans, and I think we were all massively shocked and gutted not to have you in Series 7 to come back from that. Hopefully we were like, once we'd seen you in the World Tournament, we were thinking that you would come back the following series. So yeah, it's such a shame that didn't happen again, especially with such a strong kind of win to lose ratio compared to all the gladiators.
I really don't know why they didn't. I mean, it is what it is. there's no regrets. I'm just curious. I've never found out why they replaced me. I can only presume that when I look at the after the competition and I see how I talk, I think I didn't come across very fluid with my conversation, but I was without any prior direction. I was trying to come across as the I will break him character from Dolph in Rocky IV, but obviously probably didn't come across like that. And the producers would say, this guy can't talk, let's just ship him out and get somebody with more personality. So yeah, I'm just saying it as it is.
Khan, great event for you.
It's taken me 6 years to become a gladiator, and it's going to take a tough man to stop me that I've come this far now.
Tough words from a tough gladiator.
How did you feel about the transition into the Sky production? Because it didn't quite have the budget, did it, that we initially had? And it was like all bells and whistles, everything was thrown at 9 cameras, filming live in every moment.
It was a smaller studio, more compact. And I just, the feeling I got, it was primarily... It wasn't the same. It was like sterile. There was something it was all so like special effects and the water and it wasn't the personalities they came across as a little bit kind of arrogant or precocious instead of our characters were more larger than life superheroes. The new gladiators, they just didn't have that. They were a little bit, I don't know, but it didn't feel the same. Absolutely didn't feel the same. I can only say it was more sterile. It didn't feel spiritually like warriors out there.
I know. Do you know what I said to them? I said, just please don't choreograph your gladiators. Let them evolve their own personalities. And what did they go and do? They choreographed every single step for them.
You have to choose characters with personalities so they come across. You know, you have to. If you don't get a person who's got that nice, buoyant personality, it won't come across on the screen very well. And I think the casting is important, not just physical prowess, but also the character must come across as larger than life. I remember turning up there, and again, I wasn't in one of my training periods, and we were all umming and ahhing, you know, who's going to get what game, and we saw Goliath, and Goliath was just like 20 stone free. I'm not sure whether it was Ace or one of the other lads who drew the straw to go up against Goliath, but nobody wanted any of him, so I said, well, I'll have a go. I got nothing to lose apart from a dunking. So I went up there, and to be honest, I think I landed the first blow, but he was just immovable. It's one of the things on dual mass made a big difference. You know, if you're weighing 15 stone and he's weighing 20, it's not much that you can really do against a guy like that. Even if he doesn't do anything specific, you're not going to shift him.
So 11 years since Khan last took a place in the Gladiators arena, but it doesn't seem to be worrying him or his fellow legends.
Legend! Ready?
Khan claiming that the men are here to show the boys how it's done.
Gladiator! Ready?
Not sure how this boy's going to take that comment, though.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, and a tremendous first blow from Goliath has really unsteadied Khan. Khan's regained his balance, and look at that, an absolute barrage from Goliath. But Khan is going nowhere. The legends are loving this. Khan's still in there. A brilliant blow from Goliath sends him down, though. The legends can't believe it, but Goliath certainly can. He loved that one. So did the crowd, and Khan can be proud of his efforts.
First of all, your balance is incredible. He was whacking you all over the place and you stayed on.
He's like a mountain up there. I really tried, but I think that few extra stone that he's got over me made the difference. You can't move him. I really hit him and nothing happened. But fair play to him. He's a big guy and I give him respect.
It seems to me that gladiators weren't that big in the old days.
What it is, times have changed. We used to be athletic. Now they're going for more cosmetic appeal.
It was a pretty good fight, though, and you managed to have really good balance as well. So you stayed up there for quite a while.
In general, longer than most people, but I just didn't have them. And I wasn't in training. I remember that particular call. I got about a week's notice. Would you like to take part? I said yes. And I turned up. I wasn't training. Every couple of years, I'd have about 5 months off just to recover the joints, and thought, why is Murphy's Law always getting me when I'm least in my best shape? So I turned up. I did give it a valiant effort, but I wasn't big enough to be able to really trouble him.
And what did you think about the water element? Obviously, when he knocked you off duel instead of going onto the crash mats with the water, did you prefer the water or the crash mats for gladiators?
With the water, it's really weird because they had lights at the bottom and you could very easily get disorientated. I remember initially going down was to realise that's the light, and the up is slightly darker. So going up was, it didn't make no difference. It was the pain of defeat was far greater than any mat or water splash.
And talking about revivals, obviously Gladiators is coming back. And looking on your social media, Rad, your boys, are they interested in the new series?
Rad and his boys, I tell you what, the battles we had in the wrestling mat, they've still been trying to beat me, right? My middle son, Milos, he was going to compete in the Commonwealth Games, but he sprained his ankle when the lockdown finished. He went to the club and he tripped him. A wrestler tripping. But they're all in super shape because we've been wrestling since they were kids. Amongst four of us and myself, we could represent the old Glads against the new Glads. It'd be quite a scene. But the older one said, I don't want to be in your shadow. I want to be an MMA fighter. The real deal, you would pretend. I said, son, they didn't have MMA when I was starting doing that.
So, Rad, how did it come to an end? What happened there?
Well, I did. What happened was it was kind of slowly phased out. I did the Raw tournament. I wasn't invited to the indoor arena. So during the filming, they were in the indoor arena while I was in the Raw tournament. And then the following year, there was just basically no callback. But I did carry on doing pantomime for another 2 or 3 years. So the pantomime was still operating, but I was not part of the Gladiators. The contract wasn't renewed.
Did you not ask the question? Like, was there a conversation that was had? Did anyone tell you? How did you find?
Nobody told me anything. Nobody. They just kind of, I think I got an email saying I will be no longer required, and that was it. And I don't like to ask. It is what it is. The dice has been rolled, and good luck and all the best.
Out of all of your memories of Gladiators, do you have one that kind of stands out more than any of the others?
It was really, really the biggest moment of everything. I mean, the games, everything was great, the characters. But that moment when I passed the second time I went for the tryout, Nigel Lithgow or Ken Warwick, I can't remember, they took me to the staircase from the sports arena. It was the nautical school, and they had one of those old traditional sports halls with the beams that would come from the ceiling and cross and wooden floor. After a long tryout, they pulled me to one side. He stood on 2 steps above me and he said, we'd like to hire you to be a gladiator. And all I can think of is not that I'm in the Gladiators, but I've done it. I beat everybody the tryouts and I avenged the loss that I did 2 years earlier. That's the only thing that was still there today. I got in. One person, 65 million people. I said I was going to do it and I did it. It was better. The odds were better than winning the lottery.
We always ask the guests that come on the show if they could go back to that time. And often it's back to kind of just before they joined Gladiators. But I feel like with you, there were like a couple of missed opportunities before you got onto the show. So if you could go back in time, would you do anything different to try to have got on the show earlier?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I remember seeing leaflets in Temple Gym coming down and they were on the counter. New series to be launched, Gladiator. And I looked at it and I never thought much of it. I never really registered it. There's lots of little promotions here and there and I didn't think much of it. And that was the biggest regret. I guess if I took it seriously, when I picked up that leaflet from one of the bodybuilding magazines, I could have gone to the tryouts. I'm not saying I would have got in, but I would have given it I would have prepared and I would have given it a good go. And I had long hair down to there then. So that would have been interesting, but it is what it is.
And Rad, what's your life been like since Gladiators?
It's good.
Recognised?
Not very often. It's the hair. One of the things that people focus on is the hair. And occasionally people will just say something, but I look very different from then. So not very often, but it's good like that. Anyway, it's better. I don't seek any recognition. So it's good when you're walking. Anonymity is a blessing, believe it or not. Many years ago, I love developing and reading different thoughts and reading New Scientist magazine on happiness. And the final surmising of the whole magazine, which was dedicated to happiness, it said, we went all over the world and what we've come to the conclusion is a mild form of contentment. And I thought, you know what? That's exactly, wherever there's highs, there's huge lows. So what I strive to do is just find things that make me kind of content. Walks, going mountaineering. I got chickens. It's like small things that give you gratification, what it's about. So I've got 6 children, lovely children, 4 boys, 2 daughters, and I like to think I've brought them up well. So it could be a lot worse.
I just can't believe that you own chickens. I don't know what it is. Can't.
What it is, actually, they're not ordinary chickens. They're Shamo chickens, and they are Japanese game birds. And I bought an incubator, and I've got these little eggs from the eBay, and I'm hatching And I've got this grey little rooster, which is 4 months old, and I'm trying to get him just to be beautiful. Roosters are really spiritual animals. You know, when they say chickens are, you're like a chicken. Chickens are they're like little velociraptors.
This is why I love the GladPod, because it's stuff like this that we just would never have ever found out before.
Rad, there was one thing that I wanted to ask you as well, just following the 30th anniversary pod, is that whenever anyone from that series saw you, there was definite affection towards you. I thought it was really nice to see during that Zoom call that every time someone saw you come up, like if you just started speaking and you popped up on the screen, like if someone, like when Wolf joined, I don't think he realised you were there, and then you were, and his face just absolutely lit up. That must have been lovely for you as well.
It was a brotherhood. All I can say is it was a brotherhood. In a different time and a different era, we'd be like the Musketeers. We weren't just gladiators. It probably, if you can have this life where you're reborn, like a bit like Blackadder in different time periods, we'd probably be together some dastardly bunch of assassins or warriors, or in the arena in the Colosseum. Maybe in a previous life we were in the Colosseum, but who was going to be Spartacus? We don't know. Maybe Hunter or myself.
From Serbia to Solihull, Rad the Glad, it has been so good having this chat with you. It's one that I've been really looking forward to, especially after the 30th anniversary pod as well. So thank you so much for joining us on the Glad Pod.
It was my pleasure and honour.
So there we have it, Khan on the GladPod. Producer Paul, I'm still coming to terms with him throwing that curveball right at the very end about the chickens.
I know, it's so random. I don't know why I find it such a weird thing to think of, that this massive gladiator is now looking after these Japanese chickens. I think it was great to know, and I think, like I said throughout the interview, this is exactly why we do the GladPod, is to find out these little nuggets of random information and give the glimpse of who these people are behind the gladiator helmet.
The one thing that I really took away from that chat with Khan is I think he's slightly different in his gladiatorial journey, because he was so eager to get on Gladiators, and just how many times he applied to get on the show, failing the auditions, and he kind of used that setback to come back stronger and try again. And I think some of the gladiators we speak to were like, didn't really know what it was about. He knew full well what it was about. He wanted to get on that show, and it took him a while to make it happen, didn't it, Paul?
Yeah, it did. And I love how he mentioned in his interview as well how it wasn't necessarily in the end about getting on the show. It was more about just completing that audition, and the kind of the mindset that he had to get into to kind of, he knew what he wanted to do, and it didn't matter how many times he had to come back to try it again. He was just so determined to kind of complete the audition. And I think it was just a bonus prize that he ended up on the show.
And we've had another gladiator come on the GladPod and talk about not getting enough direction from the producers, because we had Hawk earlier on in this series talking about how he wished that he had a bit more direction so that he could have perhaps evolved his character a bit more. And it's strange because we've had so many other original gladiators that have said, actually, I quite like the hands-off approach because it allowed me to develop my character. But he was saying as well, he came across as being, he wanted to be silent and deadly. And actually that probably didn't do him any favours when it comes to winning over the fans. And I think, Di, we've spent so long talking to other gladiators about having that freedom. Now we've had two that have said, I wish they'd just given us a bit more guidance.
Yeah, I did feel for him when he said that. I don't know. I wish I'd done a show with him, because he's my sort of thinking gladiator completely. It would have been nice to work alongside with him. And that his, resilience to keep coming back and to actually complete the tryout and prove to himself and to the rest of us he deserved to be in that arena.
Yeah, and he put a lot of pressure on himself to perform and do well. And he had a good win rate, Paul, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, which makes it even more surprising that the producers didn't really give him the opportunity to come back for another series, which is a massive shame, because I think had he had the opportunity to develop his character and kind of find out who he was as a gladiator and kind of get used to being in front of the cameras and all of that side of things, which I think a lot of people forget that's what you need to be a gladiator. It's not always about doing so great on the events and being that great sportsman. It's about having that, I suppose, that connection with the people down the camera. But I have no doubt that had he had the opportunity to come back, I think he was definitely on the way to kind of standing out a little bit more and kind of developing who he was, with growing his hair a little bit longer, and he was going to kind of talk a bit more and kind of try to develop all of that. So yeah, it's a massive shame.
Di, I saw you nodding along when he was talking about, that pressure that he put on himself. Did you put a lot of pressure on yourself at the start, and did that kind of ease as you kind of went on in the series?
Great question. Thinking back now, yes, I did put a lot of pressure on myself. I think we were all a little bit naive as to what exactly was to come for all of us. It's not until you walk into the cathedral of the arena and actually start taking part in the events in real time with the risks involved, but with a live audience and then millions at the end of the camera, that the enormity actually starts to hit. So in reverse, David, for me, I kind of went in feeling okay, a bit pressured, but as it went on and my win rate was quite good and I knew what people were expecting from me, the pressure got worse for me as the show went on over the few years that I did do. But what I also loved about Khan is he brought into the arena a real kind of inheritance of one of Britain's most outstanding bodybuilders, a guy called Dorian Yates. So he brought that mental attitude of resilience and keeping training and keeping powerful and keeping strong all along with him. And to have the presence of someone like Dorian Yates in the arena alongside us bodybuilder gladiators, particularly the guys, was also a really wonderful thing that he brought to the table.
Paul, I didn't know this before, that his name was based on Shere Khan from the Jungle Book.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. And when he kind of went back to the Sky Legends episodes and they kind of did a bit of a tribute to the old costumes, they actually did have the tiger, the Shere Khan on his costume then. Yeah, when he did mention that, the kind of his idea behind the name was because of Shere Khan from the Jungle Book, because of his jaw. I don't know, something about that, it kind of makes sense to me. I can kind of see where the whole connection was with it as well.
Also, we got a bit more of an insight into the gladiator that never was, Shark, that eliminator-style whiplash against Khan to see who would go on the show. I can't remember Shark telling us that story when he was on.
I'm trying to cast my mind back because I did know about that, but I'm not sure if it was kind of spoken about with Shark on the episode. But it is pretty brutal to be kind of put gladiator on gladiator whilst you're in the arena, training to go on the show, no doubt with some of the other gladiators kind of probably watching on from the sidelines, and knowing that whoever won or lost that game would make it onto the show and the other person would be sent home. That's proper gladiatorial kind of style. Thumbs up, thumbs down, get out.
Di, if you had to go up against Lightning to get onto the show, which event would you pick to go up against Lightning in?
Oh, always Hang Tough. We would give each other such a good run, or would have given she still would, a run for our money. We'd have been like spiders in a web, moving quickly and traversing and double ringing. It is one of the hardest events, and as ex-gymnasts, we just had the articulation and the background skills, and it would be epic.
I think there were many fans that would pay to see that as well.
Paul, Di, thank you so much. Remember, guys, you can get in touch with the GladPod by emailing gladpod@gladiatorstv.com, or you can send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you again soon.
Good competition, good spirit, great sportsmanship as both contenders show mutual respect. Join us again next week for the ultimate challenge, the might of